Hello guys, and welcome to this lesson for cumulative frequency graphs. In this lesson, we will be exploring two things: how to read cumulative frequency graphs and find things like the median, the interquartile range, and also answer some questions maybe around percentages. And later on in this lesson, we'll be looking at drawing our own cumulative frequency graph from the table and also finding those various things. So stay tuned. Right, so let's begin with this first question here. We've got a cumulative frequency graph already given to us, and it says that this is representative of the information about the lengths in minutes of 80 telephone calls. And the first part says find the number of calls which were longer than 15 minutes. So if you have a look at our graph, we've got the cumulative frequencies here on the y-axis, and we've got the length of call in minutes on the x-axis. And we are looking for longer than 15 minutes. So we go along to the minutes and we find where 15 is. And if we just take our pen and just mark it along, and you need to do this with a ruler at home. So it's roughly approximately in between the box here. So once you've drawn your line in, we are looking for 15 minutes and above because we're looking for longer than 15 minutes. So we are looking for this part of the graph. So on the y-axis, we are looking for this part of the graph. We want to know what the value is right here. Now, in order to do this, what is very important to understand is what each of the squares represent. Now, in order to work out what each of these boxes are equal to, each of the small boxes, we can just count them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So between 0 to 20, it's represented by 10 small squares, which means that each of these small squares is representative of 2 phone calls, all right? So if we count up here, we've got 60, we've got 70 here, and we've got just halfway between 70. Now, the examiner will allow some margin of error, so don't worry if you're not pinpoint on this exact value here. So I'm estimating 71 because I've got 70 right there, and obviously 72 will be the next one. So 71 will be the mark that I've drawn my line on. Now, if you choose 70 or 72, it's not a problem. Now, what we need to find is above 71. What is above 71 up to the point of 80? And as you know, it is 9 phone calls, because all we need to do is 80 minus 71, and that gives us 9. So therefore, 9 phone calls were longer than 15 minutes. Now let's find the median and the interquartile range. Starting off with the median is the 50% mark. So if our cumulative frequency is 80, half of that, the 50% mark, will be on 40. So we go to 40 to find the median, see where it hits the graph, and then we just go down. Now, you need to know what each of these boxes are worth. So if you just use this as a guide, like we did previously, you could see that between 0 and 5, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 small boxes, which means that every 2 small boxes is worth 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it seems that our median would be on 8. So our median is equal to 8. Now let's find the interquartile range. Now the interquartile range, the IQR as it's known as, is equal to the third quartile, take away the first quartile. And what is the third quartile? The third quartile is our 75% mark, or 3/4 mark. And our first quartile is our 25% mark, or the first quarter. So if you have a look at our numbers now, so what is the first quarter and the third quarter? So all you have to do for that is to do 80 divided by 4, and you find out what you've basically split 80 into 4 parts, into quarters, right? So this will be working out what 1 quarter is. So 80 divided by 4 is 20. So 20 is 1/4. So if we go to here, so we are finding Q1 now, which is 25%. So 20, if you go across, see where it hits the line, and then you read down. And then you can see that it's on 6. So our Q1, our 25% mark, is 6. Now, in order to find the third quartile, which is also referred to as the upper quartile, just as the first quartile is referred to as the lower quartile, you can take the first quartile value that you found, which was 20, and times that by 3. So 20 times by 3 is equal to 60. and you go to this position of 60 on the cumulative frequency, you go across, see where it hits your line, and then you just read down. And you can see that it's 11. So our Q3 value, the upper quartile or the third quartile, is 11. So how do we find the interquartile range? Well, the interquartile range is the third quartile take away the first quartile, or the upper quartile take away the lower quartile. So therefore, it's going to be 11 minus 6, which gives us 5. So the interquartile range is 5. Now you may be wondering, what is an interquartile range? Well, the interquartile range is looking at the middle 50% of your data values. And the advantages of that over the range is that it does away with the outliers, the extreme values that may affect your data. So it's a much more accurate representation of the data. However, I will explain this in more detail in the lesson that I do on box plots. Now that you have seen how to read and find values from a cumulative frequency graph, let's now go on to construct our own. Okay, so in this question, we are going to be drawing our own cumulative frequency graph. Now, an exam question will give you a table like this, which is usually blank, but if it's not like the case, maybe you're answering questions from your exercise book, you may not get this table, you'll just add another column here and you call it cumulative frequency, and then you do what I'm going to show you here. All right, so let's go. So what does this question say? This question says that the table here shows information about the lengths of time that 120 people spent in a supermarket. So you can see here, you've got the frequency in this column and you've got the time in minutes in this column. Now, what's very important to understand is looking at what these signs are. So if you have a less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, just make a note of that. And I'll tell you more about that when I actually start constructing our cumulative frequency graph. So what do we do? So like I said before, you can add your own column here if you want to. If you've been given an exercise that doesn't include this table, or if you're answering from an exam paper, then usually it includes this table for you. All right, so cumulative means to collect, to add up. In order to fill out this table, the cumulative frequency, we are adding the frequencies. So the first one from 0 to 10, 0 to 10 is 8. Now 0 to 20, so you're going to do 8 plus the 17 because you want to include everything from 0 to 10, and from the next one, which is 10 to 20. So 8 plus 17 is 25. And then you add the next one, which is another 25, which gives us 50. And then you add the next one, which is 40, which is 90. Then you add the next one, which is 22, which is 112. And then finally, you add the last one, which is 8, and you get 120. So this is our column for cumulative frequency completed. All we now have to do is plot these points. Now, there are two ways that you can do this. You can either just go straight to your graph, which is given in the next slide here, or what you can do, and what I've seen some people do and it's quite useful, is at this point you can actually start writing the coordinates. So you can plot your graph as a coordinate. Now, what do I mean by this? The cumulative frequency you saw earlier was what's on the y-axis. Okay, our CF goes right there. And along the x-axis, we will have our minutes. So therefore, this is like our x value right there. So what is our x value? Well, we plot, it says that the t value is from 0 to less than or equal to 10, which means 10 itself can be our value. So that our maximum value in that column. So it's going to be 10 and 8. That's our coordinate. And you could do the same for the rest of them too. So this one, the maximum value that we can take is 20. So 20 and 25. It's going to get quite squashy if I do this, continue to do this here. So you can just do this at home on your books. So the next one's going to be 30 and 50. Next one's going to be 40 and 90. The next coordinate is going to be 50 and 112, 60 and 120. Let's go to a canvas where we can plot our cumulative frequency graph. All right, so I've just written down all the coordinate points here because it makes my life easier than having to look at the table which is on the previous slide, and I will start plotting. So 10 to 8. So 10 on the minutes and 8 here. Now, every square, you have to know what they represent. So you can see here from 0 to 20, you have 10 squares. You can count them. Or you can make your own, by the way, if you're doing this on your own graph paper. But it's up to you, as long as you have that consistency going. Okay, which means that if you're going to use 10 squares to represent 0 to 20, you also got to represent 10 squares from 20 to 40, 40 to 60, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, From 0 to 20, if you're using 10 squares, that means each small square is basically 2. So we want to have 8. So 2, 4, 6, 8. We're going to have 4 of these small squares, and we go along to our 10 right there. And there you have our first coordinate, 10, 8. The next one is 20, 25. So 20, and then you go and find where 25 is. Now, obviously, halfway between 20 and 40 is going to be 30. So 25 is going to be halfway between that. So you just estimate roughly about there, I would say. That's 20, 25. Next, you got 30 and 50. So you go to 30 and you go and find where 50 is. And 50 is going to be exactly halfway between 40 and 60. So right there. After that, you got 40 and 90. So 40 and 90, once again, halfway between 80 to 100, right there. And 50 to 112. So that's 110, 112 would be there. And then you got 60 to 120, which is right there. Now, the next step is very, very important. I have seen students make so many mistakes because they get confused with other types of graphs, such as a frequency polygon. How to draw a graph for cumulative frequency? Like this. The first thing, if you remember our table started on 0 to 10 minutes. You can refer to that table again. So we will need to also start from 0. And all you do is you can do this freehand, or you can actually even use a ruler. They do allow that. But I don't have a ruler handy, so I'm just going to use my free hand to do this. I'll just use another color pen as well. You just join them up. Oops. There, 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 and there. And you can see that nice and smooth curve. That is my cumulative frequency graph completed. I can now begin to answer some questions from here. Now, there are some questions down here which you obviously can't see, and if I scroll up, then this will disappear. So I'm just going to write them for you separately here, and we are going to answer those questions now. Okay, so I've prepared some questions that we are going to answer to finish this lesson off. First thing we're going to do is we're going to find the median, just like we did previously, and also the interquartile range. And then a third part of this question is, what percentage spent longer than 45 minutes in the supermarket? So let's start with our median. We have 120 on the total for the cumulative frequency, and half of that, which is the median, the 50% value, is 60. So we go to 60, go across, and read down. So what is this value that we've landed on? So we can see that from 30 to 40, we've got 10 squares, small squares in between. So each square is equal to 1. So that's 31, 32, 33. So our median is 33 minutes spent in the supermarket. Now, to find the interquartile range, we will find the upper quartile and the lower quartile. The upper quartile and the lower quartile are our 3/4 and 1/4 mark. So let's start with the lower quartile. Let's use a different color pen as well. Let's use a purple. The lower quartile. So to find the lower quartile, we do 120 divided by 4. So 120 divided by 4 is 30. So we are going up to 30, which is halfway between 20 and 40, right there. And we go and see where it hits that line. And it hits the line right there. So that's 21, 22, 23 I've got. So Q1 is 23. Now to find Q3, I can just take this value and times it by 3. So 30 times by 3 is 90. So I'll go to 90 right there, go across, and see where it hits. And it hits at 40. So Q3, the upper quartile, is 40. Therefore, the IQR is going to be 40 take away 23, which is 17. So our interquartile range is 17 minutes. Our middle, 50% of the time in minutes spent in the supermarket, is 17 minutes. Now let's go on to part C, which is what percentage spent longer than 45 minutes. So we will go to 45 minutes and find out where that mark is. So right there is 45 minutes, and we go up and see where it is. So it hits just above the 100, and earlier on we worked out that every 1 square is equivalent to 2. So that's going to be 102. So we want above, we want longer than 45 minutes, so which means this part of the graph, and therefore from here on. So 102 to 120 is 18. 18 people spent longer than 45 minutes. But the question asks us for the percentage. So it's going to be 18 out of the total amount of people, which is 120, and we times that by 100. And the answer to that is 15%. So 15% of the people spent longer than 45 minutes at the supermarket. Hope you enjoyed this lesson. I will be doing a separate lesson on box plots, which is related to cumulative frequency, so do keep an eye out for that. Please don't forget to give this video a like, comment in the comments section below if there's any topics that you would like me to cover, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now, guys.